Okay, so some of this came up in the discussion of what tolerance means. So there's a few different dictionaries. I had to find the definitions that suited what I wanted to get across. So there's something about like putting up with something that's hard, you know, in the meaning of tolerance, the capacity to endure. Um, Also, you know, the allowable amount of variation, you know, so if something's outside of what we feel is allowable, then we don't tolerate it. We're intolerant to it. And you know, the source of the word, it means bearing hardship. So it's almost like tolerance means, you know, it's intrinsic to stress, really. So then acceptance. So I went to the original etymology of the word, and it means the ability to take something to oneself. Um, so a lot of the dictionary definitions they it kind of overlaps with the word tolerance. So I want to just kind of move beyond that a little bit. So if acceptance is what we are accepting, you know, to ourselves, then what is it that we're accepting? Because certain things are just not acceptable. Um, and you know, Alice said it when she said we can accept that someone else is a fallible person. We accept them as a whole person, despite their fallibilities, and even it can be despite the fact that there might be certain behaviors that we cannot tolerate, that are intolerable for ourselves or for society or whatever it is. So the thing about acceptance and the way that I kind of distinguished it is it doesn't mean we have to agree with that person. It just means that we accept them as another human being, like as a whole human being, uh, uh, which includes the fact that, like us, they're fallible. You know, no one's perfect, and the more we can accept our own fallibility, uh, the more we can accept other people's fallibility. So this diagram is kind of what started this whole thing in terms of tolerance and acceptance, and it's one of the sources of this listening project altogether. So there's a number of arrows going from the outer circle, which is the intolerance zone. Outside of that is the non-acceptance zone. Then there's intolerance zone. So that's like racism is intolerance, you can say. Bigotry is intolerance. Then we go into the tolerance zone. So you could say, you know, the progressive left, they consider themselves to be non-bigoted and, you know, they're against intolerance. However, there is a limit to their tolerance. And outside of that limit, they are intolerant and they are bigoted when it comes to people that they disagree with, that don't exhibit the same values about certain things. And this is a shadow of people who consider themselves tolerant. While we do have to have boundaries, there's certain things which are not acceptable that we shouldn't tolerate. We still have to accept the fact that these imperfect people, just like ourselves, are whole people in and of themselves. They're not a monster. And this is the central zone here where we get to the acceptance zone. And people who are oriented by acceptance rather than tolerance, which always comes with intolerance, um, they can accept the fact that themselves are fallible, everyone else is fallible, and everyone is a human being on a journey. And once we can accept that, then we can start to relate to them, even when we don't agree with everything that they believe. So, the person that made this diagram, one of the things they're trying to get across is that both the tolerance and the intolerant zone, leads to war, essentially. And it's only the acceptance zone where we can kind of rise above all of this us and them, because it's all us, essentially. Then we can start to end this divisiveness, more and more polarity. And so they're saying, for every 10,000 who shift from tolerance to acceptance, one will shift from intolerance to tolerance. So it's like leading from the front. So another way of saying that is, one of the things that's driving people towards the extremes of politics is the opinions of the other side. So the so-called tolerant left will other the right-wing people. Like, everyone who votes Tory to them is basically a Nazi in waiting. And when you make people unacceptable in that way, what are they going to do? They're going to find a tribe that finds them acceptable. This drives division, this drives polarity. To feel unacceptable is intolerable for the self. It's the worst thing there is. And ultimately, we all want to be accepted. That's it.